The millionaire's paralyzed son wouldn't stop crying in the meeting until a poor little girl fed him. The boardroom fell silent, except for one sound that made every executive shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs, the heart-wrenching cries of a child. Marcus Wellington Roman III, one of the most powerful men in the city, sat frozen as his 8-year-old son Daniel continued to sob uncontrollably, his small body trembling in his wheelchair. The merger that could change everything hung in the balance, but nothing Marcus tried could calm his boy. If this story touches your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Trillionaire in Love for more inspiring stories. Don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Marcus had built his empire from nothing, transforming a small tech startup into a billion-dollar corporation. His ruthless business tactics and sharp mind had earned him respect and fear in equal measure. But 3 years ago, everything changed when a drunk driver collided with the family car. While Marcus walked away with minor injuries, Daniel's spine was severely damaged, leaving him paralyzed from the waist down. The accident didn't just take away his son's ability to walk, it seemed to steal his joy, his laughter, and his trust in the world. Today's board meeting was crucial. The merger with Stevenson Industries would secure Daniel's future, ensuring he'd never want for anything. The best medical care, the finest education, a life of comfort, it all depended on this deal. But Daniel had been having one of his difficult days, and Marcus's nanny had called in sick. With no other choice, Marcus brought his son to the office, hoping the familiar environment might calm him. The crying had started the moment they entered the building. Daniel's therapist had explained that certain triggers, loud noises, unfamiliar faces, feelings of helplessness could send him into panic attacks. The sterile corporate environment, filled with strange voices discussing numbers and contracts, was overwhelming for a child who already felt lost in a world that had suddenly become too big and frightening. "Perhaps we should reschedule," suggested Patricia Stevenson, the CEO of the other company, her voice barely concealing her frustration. The other board members nodded, checking their watches and shifting their papers. This was business, after all, and emotional outbursts had no place in a boardroom. Marcus felt his carefully constructed world crumbling. "Please, just give me a moment," he pleaded, kneeling beside Daniel's wheelchair. "Son, I need you to calm down. Can you try for Daddy?" But his words only seemed to make Daniel cry harder, his small hands gripping the wheelchair's armrests as if holding on for dear life. The meeting room was on the 15th floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of the bustling street below. Marcus had chosen this room deliberately. It was his power room, where he'd closed his biggest deals. But now, looking at his son's tear-streaked face, all that power felt meaningless. Outside the glass conference room, employees tried to continue their work, but the sound of Daniel's distress was carrying through the building. Some looked on with sympathy, others with annoyance. This was Wellington Industries, a place of order and efficiency, not a daycare center. That's when she appeared. 7-year-old Maya Rodriguez was visiting the building with her mother, Rosa, who worked as a janitor on the night shift. Rosa had been called in for an emergency cleaning job after a water pipe burst on the 3rd floor, and with no one to watch Maya, she had reluctantly brought her daughter along. Maya was small for her age, with bright brown eyes and a tattered backpack that contained all her worldly treasures, a few picture books, some colored pencils, and a half-eaten sand, which her mother had packed for lunch. While Rosa worked frantically to clean up the water damage, Maya had wandered through the halls, fascinated by the grand building with its marble floors and impressive artwork. The sound of crying had drawn her to the conference room, and through the glass wall she could see a boy in a wheelchair who looked about her age, surrounded by adults in expensive suits who seemed helpless to comfort him. Maya understood sadness. Her family had moved to the city 6 months ago after her father lost his job back home. They lived in a cramped one-bedroom apartment, and Maya often went to bed hungry while her mother worked multiple jobs to keep them afloat. But despite their struggles, Maya had learned something the adults in that boardroom hadn't. Sometimes the simplest gestures carry the most power. Without asking permission, Maya pushed open the heavy conference room door. The adults turned to stare at this small intruder in her worn sneakers and faded dress, but Maya only had eyes for Daniel. She could see past the expensive clothes and the high-tech wheelchair to the scared little boy underneath. "Hi," she said softly, approaching Daniel's chair with the fearless compassion that only children possess. "I'm Maya. Why are you sad?" Marcus started to intervene, to apologize for the interruption and send the girl away, but something in his son's face made him stop. For the first time in hours, Daniel's crying had quieted to soft hiccups. He was staring at Maya with curiosity, perhaps recognizing a kindred spirit in this girl, who looked at him without pity or fear. Maya reached into her backpack and pulled out her sandwich, peanut butter and jelly on day, old bread, carefully wrapped in a napkin. It was probably the last food she'd have until dinner, but she saw something in Daniel's eyes that reminded her of her own loneliness. "Are you hungry?" she asked, unwrapping the sandwich. "My mama made this for me, but I want to share it with you. Sharing makes everything taste better." The boardroom had fallen completely silent. 12 of the most powerful people in the corporate world watched as a poor little girl offered half of her meager lunch to a millionaire's son. There was something profound in the moment, something that transcended the vast differences in their circumstances. Daniel looked at the simple sandwich, then up at Maya's gentle face. Slowly, he nodded and took a small bite. It wasn't the gourmet meals he was used to, prepared by private chefs and served on fine china. But somehow, this sandwich shared in friendship tasted better than anything he'd eaten in months. As Daniel ate, Maya began to talk. She told him about her favorite books, about the stray cat she'd been feeding near their apartment building, about the drawings she liked to make when she felt scared or lonely. Her voice was like a balm, washing away the tension that had gripped the room. She didn't ask about his wheelchair or treat him like he was broken. She simply saw him as another child who needed a friend. "I get scared sometimes too," Maya confided, sitting cross-legged on the floor beside his chair. "When Mama has to work late and I'm alone, I feel like crying just like you were. But then I remember that tomorrow might be better, and that helps me feel brave." Daniel found his voice for the first time that day. "I don't feel brave," he whispered. "I used to run and play, but now I can't. Everything is different and scary." Maya nodded sagely, far wiser than her 7 years should have allowed. "Different doesn't mean bad," she said. "My mama says that sometimes God changes our path so we can help other people who need us. Maybe your chair is like a superhero power. It makes you special." The adults in the room exchanged glances, humbled by the wisdom flowing from this small girl who had nothing but was willing to give everything. Marcus felt tears he hadn't shed since the accident beginning to form in his eyes. Maya spent the next hour with Daniel, sharing stories and making him laugh for the first time in months. She showed him her drawings and asked if he'd like to color with her. With shaking hands, whether from emotion or excitement, Marcus couldn't tell Daniel picked up a crayon and began to draw. It was just simple stick figures, but to Marcus it might as well have been the Mona Lisa. When Rosa finally found them, having finished her emergency cleaning, she was mortified. "Maya, what are you doing?" "I'm so sorry, sir," she said to Marcus, recognizing him from the employee newsletter photos. "She shouldn't be bothering you." But Marcus stood up, his voice thick with emotion. "She's not bothering us. She's—" He paused, searching for words that could capture what had just happened. "She's given us a gift." The board meeting resumed with a completely different energy. The merger was approved unanimously, but it was no longer the most important thing that had happened that day. As the executives filed out, each one stopped to say goodbye to Maya and Daniel, their usual corporate facades replaced by genuine warmth. Patricia Stevenson, the stern CEO who had been ready to walk out hours earlier, knelt down beside Maya's chair. "Thank you for reminding us what really matters," she said quietly. "I have a granddaughter about your age, and I hope she grows up to be as kind as you." As the room emptied, Marcus found himself alone with Maya, Daniel, and Rosa. The janitor looked nervous, probably expecting to be fired for her daughter's unauthorized visit to the boardroom. Instead, Marcus did something that surprised everyone, including himself. "Rosa, isn't it?" he asked, his voice gentler than it had been in years. "How would you feel about a different position? I think our company could use someone like Maya's mother on our team, and Maya." He turned to the little girl who had worked a miracle with nothing but kindness and a shared sandwich. "Would you like to be Daniel's friend? Maybe you could visit us sometimes if your mother agrees." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. The new position Marcus was offering came with a substantial raise, health benefits, and daytime hours that would let her be home with Maya in the evenings. More importantly, it came with the promise that her daughter's extraordinary compassion was valued and recognized. Over the following months, Maya and Daniel's friendship blossomed. They had playdates in the Wellington mansion, but Daniel also visited Maya's modest apartment, where he learned that happiness didn't require wealth. Maya taught him to find joy in small things, the way sunlight streamed through a window, the satisfaction of finishing a puzzle, the warmth of a friend's laughter. Daniel's progress amazed his doctors and therapists. The panic attacks became less frequent, and his outlook on life gradually improved. He started participating in adaptive sports programs and even began mentoring other children with disabilities. The change wasn't just in his emotional state. His physical therapy improved dramatically as his motivation returned. Marcus underwent his own transformation. The ruthless businessman who had once prioritized profits over people began to see his company through different eyes. He established a foundation providing support for families affected by disabilities and created a scholarship program for underprivileged children like Maya. The merger with Stevenson Industries proved successful, but more importantly, it led to partnerships that focused on social responsibility alongside financial gain. Maya continued to be Maya kind, wise beyond her years, and utterly unimpressed by wealth or status. She reminded everyone around her that the most valuable things in life couldn't be bought or sold. Her mother Rosa became not just an employee, but a trusted family friend, someone whose perspective Marcus had learned to value above that of his highest-paid consultants. The conference room where it all began was renamed the Maya Rodriguez Room, with a small plaque that read, "Where we learned that the smallest gestures can create the biggest changes." It became a place where the company held meetings about community, outreach, and social responsibility. A reminder that business success should be measured not just in dollars, but in the positive impact on people's lives. 1 year later, Marcus stood at the window of that same conference room, watching Daniel and Maya play in the courtyard below. Daniel was racing his wheelchair around an obstacle course Maya had designed, both children laughing with pure joy. The sound of their happiness carried through the glass no longer a cry for help, but a celebration of friendship and resilience. He thought about that day when his world had seemed to be falling apart, when a business deal had felt more important than his son's pain. A poor little girl with nothing but a sandwich and an open heart had taught them all something invaluable, that healing doesn't come from having all the answers or all the money in the world. Sometimes it comes from someone who cares enough to share what little they have. Marcus pulled out his phone and opened his voice recorder, something he'd started doing to capture the lessons Maya continued to teach them. Today's note, he began, his voice soft with wonder. Maya reminded Daniel that scars tell stories of survival, not defeat. She said his wheelchair isn't what makes him different, his kindness is what makes him special. And she's right. We've been focusing so much on what he can't do that we forgot to celebrate what he can do. The merger had indeed secured Daniel's financial future, but Maya had given him something far more precious: hope, friendship, and the understanding that his worth wasn't measured by his physical abilities but by the size of his heart. She had shown Marcus that sometimes the poorest people are the richest in the things that truly matter. As the sun set over the city, casting a warm glow through the conference room windows, Marcus made a promise to himself. He would never again let business consume him so completely that he forgot what Maya had taught them all: that success without compassion is meaningless, that wealth without generosity is empty, and that the most important meetings aren't the ones where deals are made, but where hearts are opened and lives are changed. The millionaire had learned the most valuable lesson of his life from a little girl who had nothing material to offer, but everything meaningful to give. And in that exchange, a sandwich shared, a friendship born, and a family transformed. Everyone involved discovered that sometimes the smallest acts of kindness create the biggest miracles. If this story inspired you, please show your support by liking this video and subscribing to Trillionaire in Love. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today, and let us know in the comments how kindness has changed your life. Remember, we all have the power to be someone's Maya, to see past differences and offer hope where there seems to be none. Until next time, keep spreading love and kindness wherever you go.